Switching to Linux has completely changed how I use my computer. It's been stable, productive, and even after years, still refreshing. But there is always room for improvement, and over the past couple of years, I've tried out many applications that work natively on Linux, trying to find perfect workflows for all my use cases, options to configure my hardware, and fix some issues. Let's get into it. One of the challenges that Linux is faced with when it comes to office work is the absence of Microsoft Office and its various programs and features like OneNote, cloud synchronization, multi-user editing, and proper change versioning. Now there are solutions on Linux that could fix that, of course, if I were to build my whole environment around them. Collabora Online, OnlyOffice with collaboration support when setting up a server, or using the online versions of Microsoft Office if that is enough. But in my pursuit to find something that works, I came to start loving Markdown editors. Applications like MarkText, Ghostwriter, plugins for Visual Studio Code, Typora or Obsidian. While they are no substitute for a full Office suite, especially when it comes to stuff like Excel, for text-based workflows, note-taking or with plugins even drawings, I found them to be much faster and more enjoyable than having to deal with Office templates. Depending on the Markdown editor, you can set export templates, integrate it with version control like Git for collaboration, and build whole project folder structures and similar. Markdown editors genuinely surprised me, and I think that they deserve far more recognition than they currently get. From all the Windows application compatibility tools, I think that Bottles is one of the most underrated ones. I personally use it to run third-party game launchers, each separated in their own environment in case I want to delete them, fix issues, or just stay organized. While other compatibility tools often also offer this functionality, I personally prefer Bottles because it strikes a good balance between how easy it is to set up most game launchers and how many settings are available out of the box. And in fact, just when writing this video, a new update now also allows you to search for games to install, just like on Lutris, and the icon situation got much better. Definitely worth mentioning. Back when I was still dual booting Windows, when it came to changing my mouse's DPI, I always used Logitech G Hub to do so, then saved the configuration to the onboard storage, which I always made sure my mice had, and then started to just use them on Linux. That was fine, but nowadays I don't use Windows at all anymore. And even if, G Hub has become so bloated that it needs to update every time I want to use it. The solution? Piper is a graphical mouse configuration tool built on the mouse configuration software libredbackd. While it does not support every mouse model out there, if you're a Logitech guy, then chances are good that your mouse is supported. In my case, the G303 Shroud Edition needs to be connected via a cable to show up. But once it does, I can adjust one or multiple DPI stages, set hotkeys, the polling rate, or even more fine-tuned settings, depending on what the connected mouse supports. Changes get written directly to the onboard storage profile so that they persist, even when Piper is closed. It's simple and quite effective. But what if you don't just have a mouse you want to adjust? What if you also have a headset that needs fine-tuning? Or you want to create a custom audio profile for gaming, watching a movie, or listening to music? Well, in that case, Easy Effects or Pulse Effects, depending on what works on your distribution, is an application that lets you create a customized audio profile for your speakers, headsets or microphones, similar like you would expect from the usual configuration tools. Whether you want to apply an equalizer, boost voices, reduce the background noise of your microphone, or simply make your headphones sound slightly more balanced. It's technically the closest thing on Linux that you can get as a substitute for the proprietary tools. If you are on an immutable distribution like Bassite, SteamOS or the atomic flavors of other distros, then you might have run into the problem that certain ways to install software just do not work, due to how the operating system handles the modifying of system files. Or you just have a program that is notorious difficult to install on a modern distribution, and you want a more effortless way to fix that. Introducing Distrobox, a neat little tool that uses containerization to run a second, third or many more Linux distributions on your operating system. And unlike virtualization, they are much smaller and more efficient. You can install Arch inside a container, for example, and suddenly install many applications with Pacman. You can install applications that might not be available natively for your distro, or you can install programs like DaVinci Resolve more easily by just installing it on the distro that it was built for. Sure, Distrobox does not work with everything. And yes, especially in video integration can be a bit finicky, but it's still one of the best compatibility tools out there. Backup applications. Yeah, keeping backups is not something that many think about, until something happens. Now Linux is not prone to more errors than Windows, don't get me wrong. What I am saying is that keeping backups is important because it was actually Windows that once broke on me after an update. Timeshift and DejaDupe are the two most commonly used solutions. Timeshift is primarily designed and configured for your system dependencies, like to restore a backup if your system were to break after an update or because of a misconfiguration, whereas DejaDupe is mostly designed for your personal files. I personally use DejaDupe at the moment to back up my files once a week. Alright, it's no secret that I am quite fond of GNOME's online accounts. Being able to connect to your cloud storage is really handy, but it does have a couple of issues. For starters, well, it only works on GNOME or desktop environments that use that same underlying integration. And it also accesses files directly, meaning that you cannot use them offline, and if an application has autosave on, constantly saving to that storage can actually cause some corruption because of the latency. And that is why many prefer rclone instead. Although third-party graphical tools like rclone UI and rclone Manager exist, rclone itself now comes with a built-in web interface for connecting and managing cloud storage providers. I can choose Microsoft OneDrive for example, leave these fields empty because it says so, and now I should be redirected to a login page. Or, if not, press the according link that is presented in the CLI. And voila, my OneDrive configuration can now be added as a mount to a directory of my choosing. I will definitely make a more detailed video on rclone in the future, so definitely make sure that you are subscribed not to miss it. Linux is often known not to be quite the same across distributions when it comes to video codecs. On Ubuntu, the video playback for your files might work fine out of the box. Then on Fedora, it doesn't. Sure, you could go hunt down all these dependencies yourself, but why not just use a different video player? The Flatpak version of the VLC media player includes all the common codecs, so you don't have to worry about it. Many in the Linux community might also prefer MPV with one of its more advanced GUI options like Celluloid or QMplay 2. Those media players usually just work, and they definitely deserve a place on this list. Oh, and speaking of Flatpaks, as you may or may not know, Flatpaks are sandboxed applications, which means that they don't get full access to your system. The default settings for most applications are usually fine, but what if you have a system that is not that common? For example, a Flatpak might only have access to read files in your home directory, but what if you have a second drive? For those use cases, instead of having to go to the command line to fix issues, you can either open up the KDE Plasma settings, if that is the desktop environment you use, or install Flatseal, a graphical configuration tool that lets you manage the permissions for your Flatpaks. So if you run into permission issues with Flatpaks, something behaves oddly while the native version works fine, then this is the place to go. And last but not least, a web browser? No, seriously. A web browser, but I don't mean just any web browser, but a web browser with progressive web app support. So either Chromium based or you install an extension if your browser doesn't fully support it yet. While many Linux users don't really like web apps, and in some sense I agree with that, the reality is that they often bridge compatibility and are actually really reliable for what does work. If you are using Linux in a business, the Microsoft Teams web app, Outlook or even Dynamics 365 are all available as web apps that integrate better with your operating system. And while native applications would definitely be nice, for the time being, it's definitely an underrated way to create new possibilities on Linux. And that is where I'll leave it. But now I'm very interested in what you have to say. Did I mention anything that you have not seen or heard about before? Which applications do you think are underrated? And do you use any of them? Please let us know in the comment section down below. If you've liked this video, then please make sure to show it with a like. And also don't forget to subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss out on any future Linux videos just like this one. I hope that you had a blast watching and that I get to see you again really soon. But all that's left to say for now is good morning, good afternoon or good evening, wherever you are. I'll see you around.